very great guest to share with you, Dr. Barry Dorfman here. Hi, Barry.
Hello, how are you?
Great. Thank you for being here with us to help our physicians out there and clinicians and healthcare workers. Want to be inspired by people like you. I ran into you through an investment opportunity, and I wanted to share your story because you just intrigued me so much. Um, I know you're a chiropractor by background, I think, and you built 28 rehab centers, which then eventually got sold, and then you retired. But then you took your whole life to another level. I'm so intrigued by that. How does one do that? Did you learn that in school? And now you built this whole BLD Holdings company, which is your own family single office holding company that encompasses a whole array of investments. Can you tell us, Barry, about your journey a little bit? And then what advice do you have for physicians and other leaders out there about how to do it, what you do?
Absolutely, my pleasure. So, when I first started in chiropractic, I was fortunate enough to, within the first year, go to a conference at the University of Florida, and I met the inventor of Nautilus equipment, Arthur Jones. And at that conference, he was presenting at that time his rehab equipment called MedX, which still exists today. In the room sitting next to me was a neurosurgeon who he and I eventually became partners. But, we had, multiple breakout sessions and we discussed the efficacy of the MedX equipment for low back and neck on his patients, on my patients, and in patients in general. Really, nothing like this existed. So we collaborated, we agreed at the end of that weekend to take the Florida distribution rights. And if nothing more, he would use it and I would use it, and we would use it on our own patients and generate, enormous income. It was approved at that point in time from reimbursement from insurance companies. The results that I got from that were incredible. The comments and calls I started getting from insurance companies and workman's comp companies, because it would show if somebody's faking an injury or being a malingerer. And that was very important for the insurance companies. And for the patients that had low back and neck surgery, it was incredibly effective. We went from those two offices. And then I just said, I started talking to other physicians and they said that they would love it. And I brought it into them and we put it into their office. And then I was realizing at that point in time that many of these physicians, only had a single practice or a single sector within their practice and were referring out for everything else. So what I did is I went to the local orthopedists, to the hospitals, to nutrition, dietitians, MRI centers, and I put a consortium together where they would travel and be a multidisciplinary center for each of these doctors. And we were all able to revenue share. Unfortunately, you can't do that anymore because the Stark bill came in. This is pre-Stark. So we're very fortunate, to build these 28 centers up. And we were also more fortunate to sell for 2 years before the Stark bill was approved, and we were able to exit. So as you know, my story, I took about 5 years off, and I then got intrigued in healthcare technology. So I went out to Palo Alto, Silicon Valley, and started focusing on what was happening in healthcare. And it was a very open ecosystem then. Everybody was open to introducing to different people. So I ran the gamut from EMRs to telemedicine at that time to, biotech, biopharma. And I really focused on, areas that I felt comfortable with. I'll tell you a couple of mistakes I made. I got in very early into EMRs from some brilliant doctors. And, I invested significantly and I took an active role, and they went to zero. And I learned at that point, the adaptation for a smart idea, it really has to be at a teaching level university or hospital. And doctors are not going to change. If I took all my handwritten notes and now you're telling somebody that they have to type into a keyboard, that was the problem. So I did have a very uh, bad experience with the early stage EMRs. But then later on, as I started making more and more investments in Silicon Valley, I got invited and I invested into Epic, which is the largest EMR now. Also Teledoc, which is obviously one of the best in the digital health. And it was through relationships. Unfortunately, I had to pay my dues and, write small checks to be able to get exposure to those larger checks. But the people that I was talking to were industry experts.
So I was going to ask you, Barry, I mean, did you have this growth mind? You have somebody, you're the epitome of someone who has a growth mindset. I mean, you saw opportunities, you were open to it, you took action on what you saw. Were you born that way? Or is this something that you learned through your parents or your
No,
brothers
so
like that?
yeah, it's an interesting, and both my brothers are physicians, still practicing now,
Okay.
uh, orthopedic and pediatric ophthalmologist. And then I have one cousin who's the head of Emory. He's a head, ear, nose, and throat specialist.
Okay.
So we come from taxi cab drivers. So
Wow.
I don't believe both of my parents and my cousins also only finished high school.
Okay.
Uh, they were determined to, we grew up in Brooklyn, very lower middle class and, determined to excel in academics. We all fell in love with healthcare, biology, and that's where everybody evolved. So no, and I stress this to my children, which I have 5 children now, uh, adults, is that the desire, I had a burning desire to be successful. So that enabled me to be around and watch other people and learn from other people and not be scared to ask, you
Wow.
know,
Yep.
what is this? Why is this? How is this? If you read Warren Buffett's little excerpt from this morning, he learned the hard way, and it's a brilliant little blurb that you should read on him making his first $1,000. So yes, I did it from interacting with other people, learning, uh, not being shy,
Yep.
and learning to build up my network. Today, my network exists, globally,
Right.
thousands of family offices and institutions that I can basically make one or two calls and reach the top people at any institution. But that was just by asking.
Right. So were you always this brave and courageous?
I,
Or is
I
this something that through the small wins that the wins got bigger and bigger?
Yeah, the wins got bigger and bigger. My parents had me, very young into always asking questions, and I was very engaged in sports and in martial arts where they had to get up there in front of 50, 60 people and perform. So I guess that shyness I never had. And that allowed me to even morph into where I am now. And I'm still continually changing, and whether it be globally or whether it be sector wise at this point in time.
Right. So you never had formal business training.
No formal business training, everything self. I hired.
Amazing.
So it's interesting, I realized where my shortcomings were. I mean, computers were not around when I had my practice. I did bring on people that were able to, you know, uh, convert my practices over and bring me to the current times then. So I was always happy to listen to other people's ideas on how to grow, but I knew who I was and I'm very comfortable in what I can do. So I was very comfortable at a very young age going to doctors that were practicing 30, 40, 50 years and telling them, here's a solution, here's where how I can show you you can double, triple, quadruple your revenue on what your existing database is. And it
Right,
worked.
right, amazing. So you really had a vision. I think as physicians, we come out, and clinicians, chiropractors, dentists, we come out of school thinking that this is all there is.
Right.
Now this is my practice. Here's my practice. This is what I can do. But there's so much more, and not just a holdings company, but there's so much more we could do in our own arena that we don't give ourselves credit for. So you kind of, and again, you brought up a great point. You not only do you build relationships, but you know what your shortcomings are and how to
Mhm.
partner with somebody to fill that gap.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's I think a very important piece that, you have to remove your ego.
Yeah.
So, even, today I'm very strong in a lot of areas, but I know where I am not an expert, and I will rely on expert opinions for that. And I did the same thing. I'd rather pay to have somebody who's an expert help me through on the business side or on the accounting side or on the legal side than try to do it on my own
Yes.
and may not be successful, or maybe you are successful.
Right. And you're focusing on your strengths, which is really building relationships and that growth mindset of yours to say, you know what, this is not all there is. And there's more. Let me learn more. Let me ask. Let me put myself in front of people who've done it before. That's what we
Absolutely.
got to do.
I mean, even today, I have a policy. I have a team of four wonderful employees that they arrange no less than four calls with other family offices every single day for the last 10 years, whether
Wow.
they Singapore, China, Korea, Germany. And I learned within 30 minutes what they're seeing there, what their economy is doing there, what their opportunities are there. And then I take copious notes and kind of try to interact and give them back the same.
That's
And it
awesome.
works
You're
very
all
well.
it's like your mastermind group, but you're doing it one on one with different countries.
When and I do the calls and I love to talk to people. Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for your advice. I love that. One last thing I want to say is you mentioned failures. How do you deal with failures? And what's your advice for physicians? Because, most of us, I think, as soon as we fail at something, we want to give up.
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I think it's not in my DNA to give up. I think a lot of that comes from the sports training that I had, to pick yourself up and just go with it. It's also not having an ego and saying, "Well, I tried it and it wasn't successful, so there's nothing else I can do." Um, you know, I have great mentors around me. As I mentioned, I can speak to people and always get another opinion. But I really never have had an issue where we've all had down times, right? And we all have these ups and downs. And I don't want to use the word depression, but it does happen. People go through divorces and businesses, partners get separated and businesses change and medicine, healthcare is dramatically changing. But I always look for that little glimmer of sunshine to move me forward rather than set me back. And it's not easy. I don't think it's easy for anybody. I'm very blessed because I have so many people around me as a support system that if I do feel that way, or I do question my business, or I do question an opportunity, I can make a handful of calls and try to realize, does this make sense or does it not make sense, and pick you up. And then it's also, taking time off. So
Yes.
many people, are so focused in working 7 days a week, 6 days a week. Now Salesforce is only working 2 days a week for their employees, so it's even better for them. But you have to take time off. You have to decompress.
Yeah.
So meditation was a great thing for me very early on. I'm still a big believer in that,
Me
and
too. Hmm.
taking that time to just think through and relax and breathe. It makes you more observant and clearer on what your next mission should be.
Love it. Thank you so much, Barry. You're very inspiring, and I'm sure your words are going to really touch a lot of lives. And if people want to find out more about you and your holding company, where can they search that, Barry?
There's very little out there on me, and I like it that way. And
Okay.
what's out there on me is really very 25 years. So LinkedIn has, an old profile on me. Somebody can reach out to me there, but you can give out my email address, at
Okay.
BLD, and my team, will go through that, and I'll be responsive to everybody if it
Okay.
comes.
Can you spell that out one more time so make sure I
Yes,
have?
Barry, Barry at BLD Holdings. So it's Boy Larry David Holdings with an S.com.
Great. Thank you so much. And I'll make sure I put a little banner there for that. Thank you so
Pleasure.
much for this interview, and I appreciate it. And happy
Great.
Sunday, everybody. And thank you for watching.
Great seeing you. Thank you now.